Hi, welcome to another edition of Ask Andrew. Each week I answer a film-related question posed by you, our BMFI patrons. If you have a film-related question you'd like to see me answer, please submit it via the Ask Andrew form. You can find that in the Film Studies online section of brynmarfilm.org. Now, on to this week's question. John asks, do you think films shot on iPhones, e.g. Tangerine, Unsane, will become a legitimized style? Well, John, that's an interesting question. Tangerine and Unsane were made by Sean Baker and Steven Soderbergh, respectively. Sean Baker, of course, who would go on after Tangerine to make the Florida Project, and Steven Soderbergh, who innovated cinema at least once before with Sex, Lies, and Videotape, one of the first and most successful indie films going back to the 80s. And of course, Soderbergh's made a host of other movies over the intervening decades. The question you're asking about legitimized style, I think, is a bit of a tricky one, because to me, there's really sort of two kinds of different questions within this. One is about the technology, the sort of cinematography in terms of the clarity of the image and the size and scope of the image and things like this. And this is, a relatively straightforward question to answer. I have found, as I'm sure many of you have, that the quality of the cameras in phones keeps getting better and better with every successive generation of phone. And the sort of resolution of the images keeps growing as well. In addition, the sorts of different features, photographic or cinematographic features that a lot of phones have keep growing too. And I think in terms of the quality of the image, that really has ceased to be a question. I know that there were films shot on sort of home video technology, home video digital technology in the 90s. I know the Dogma 95 movement did some of those. I know Soderbergh was an early adapter of digital filmmaking, and those earliest efforts really had some image quality issues, in my opinion. Did those image quality issues seem, sort of significantly different from, say, a film shot in 16 millimeter, like Kevin Smith's first feature Clerks, that was then blown up to 35 when it was released? No, I don't think so. But it was a compromised image, or compromised is too strong. It was a flawed, a less than ideal image and in those examples. But the film still had their merits, and the digital photography and cinematography has obviously radically improved since then. So in terms of the quality of the image itself, I don't think that's really an obstacle, and I think there are probably large segments of audiences that won't be able to tell what sort of, what the resolution of the image is versus one of the sort of, film industry digital cameras. And particularly not if the movie is not being seen in a theatrical setting. The other question to me then is, the other side of this question is, what is done with the camera? So there's the quality and capability of the camera, which to me is sort of really kind of a black or white question. Then there's the matter of what is done with the camera. Presumably part of the advantage of filming with an iPhone beyond cost and accessibility is the freedom of mobility with that camera, just given how small it is. And how light it is, and the various ways it can be held and moved and places it can be put and things like that. And this has the potential, as has all, recent development in digital cinematography, this has the potential to really sort of change things up, to really add a different dimension to cinematography or a different aesthetic to it. The question is that what's being done? And is that style sort of acceptable? It has there have been a number of examples in film history, even before digital cinematography was around, where too much handheld footage, and not to say these phones have to be handheld, but that's sort of the easiest and natural way that they would be used. Too much sort of handheld or handheld type footage, audiences find very disorienting, and some people even find it dizzying, or and it can make them queasy. So I think if there's too much in that sort of direction towards sort of handheld camera work, I think that that could be an issue. To the detriment of these movies. On the other hand, if you start seeing a lot of shots from interesting places where cameras hadn't traditionally been placed, I do see that having potential to sort of pick up as an interesting new dimension to film style. So I think shooting movies on those devices is going to probably become increasingly common. And I think as the sort of general movie-going audience gets more used to elements of that aesthetic from their own use of those cameras, I do think any sort of exceptions or changes to traditional practice that shooting on an iPhone, for example, leads to, will be increasingly accepted. So I do think we will start to see more of those, and if not more, then instances of the use of phones to shoot films will become sort of commonplace and less remarked on, or not at all remarked on. Thanks for the question. And if you have a question for me, you'd like to see me try to answer a film-related question, please consider sending one in. You can use the Ask Andrew form on the Film Studies Online section of brynmarfilm.org. Who knows? Maybe next time I'll be answering one of your questions.